Hello, everyone. Gordon Causey, as always, coming to you from a different location now. I'm in my spare junk room, and that's because during the daytime hours, if I sit at my dining room table, there's a big window behind me, and there's too much light. So if it's daytime, I have to come in here. And talking about what everyone's talking about. Is anyone going to watch this, and are they interested in the thoughts of an obscure Joe Nobody Canadian? Some might be, some whatever the case, but everyone knows what's happened. Donald Trump, there was an assassination attempt on President Trump, although there are all manner of conspiracy theories flying around. And I just thought I'd give my reaction to what's going on, the stories coming out. One of the things I keep hearing repeatedly from Joe Biden and from other individuals is that this is not the way we do things in America. And I almost feel like, yeah, let me give your head a shake. Really, you don't think that like this is something new to American politics, the assassination of a political figure or the attempted assassination of a political figure? You've forgotten Abraham Lincoln. You've forgotten James Garfield, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, George Wallace, governor of Alabama, Bobby Kennedy, uh, Ronald Reagan. You know, this is, if anything, gun violence. In the United States of America, Sandy Hook, Columbine, Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada, within the last 4 or 5 years. Gun violence in America and violence against political figures is nothing new. It's nothing new all around the world. Look at Indira Gandhi. Look at Benazir Bhutto. Look. This should almost be expected. It's almost in retrospect. You look back and you go, I can't believe nothing's happened before now. With the way things are so super politically charged, we all know Lincoln was assassinated. We all know that James Garfield he was the president starting in 1880. There was an interesting bit of history between 1860 and 1960. Every president in the United States elected in a year ending with a zero never completed his term in office. Started with Lincoln, then Garfield. I forget who it was in 1900, but he didn't make it out of office. I forget who it was in 1920. In 1940, it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt did not complete his term that he won in 1940, his third term. And then 1960, of course, famously John F. Kennedy. And around the Kennedy era in the 60s, are all manner of shootings going on. John F. Kennedy himself, Martin Luther King was killed. George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, was made I think, paraplegic or quadriplegic. He was in a wheelchair the rest of his life after he was shot. Bobby Kennedy, of course, when he was running for the 1968 Democratic nomination, he was widely expected to win that nomination. Then he was killed by Sirhan. And what I find most interesting, Hank Holiday, hello, my friend. And live chat is on. If I get anything wrong, if I make a mistake on anything, please, or you think I missed something, please put it in the live chat, Hank or anyone else who's watching right now. Hank Holiday is writing, prophecy that came to pass, Trump's ear on last day's YouTube channel. Dude predicted exactly what happened. Can you put a link up to that, Hank? I didn't see that. There's a YouTube channel. Hank is saying that there's a YouTube channel called Last Days. I'll admit I was going back through Revelation last night after this happened. I was working yesterday. I got home around 7 o'clock, and that's when I very quickly heard the news. Assassination attempt on, and I was watching it as it was unfolding. Was an assassination attempt. They've now, it's being widely reported, the 20-year-old kid who shot at President Trump was killed on the spot. Someone in the audience at that rally in, what was it, Butler, I think was the name of the town, Butler, Pennsylvania. I know it's Pennsylvania. Someone else was killed. I've seen an interview with someone who was sitting next to the person who apparently reportedly died. I've got so many thoughts rolling around in my head right now. And one of the things I go to, I think it's very unfortunate that the young man, I can't remember his name, Matthew something, that he was killed, because dead men tell no tales. And I was thinking of the old Godfather 2 movie, where Michael Corleone, there's an assassination attempt on Michael Corleone. He's standing in front of the windows. He asks his wife Kay, who opened the curtains? And she, I don't know, whatever. And then suddenly he realizes and dives down as bullets stream through. And in the immediate aftermath of that assassination attempt, Al Pacino, Michael Corleone, is insistent, I want them taken alive. He wanted to know who the assassins were, those who were shooting at him. He wanted them taken alive, but they were killed. When we look at John F. Kennedy, when he was assassinated, and Lee Harvey Oswald was paraded through the police station in Dallas, Texas, and he announced to the press and to the world, he said, quote, I'm just the patsy. Patsy meaning the fall guy, the one who's scripted to take the hit. And then Lee Harvey Oswald was shot in the stomach by Jack Ruby, who was the owner of a nightclub and had proven connections to organized crime. Just crazy the way things happen. And so conspiracy theories automatically come to mind. I mean, how is it that Lee Harvey Oswald, who was later posthumously found guilty of shooting John F. Kennedy, how was it that he was basically left to be killed? It was just a matter of how or when or where. What the where was settled. It was going to happen in the Dallas police station. But they did nothing to protect that man, and you would think you would want him protected, because if you wanted to unfold the conspiracy, if you wanted to understand what had truly happened, you needed Lee Harvey Oswald alive. If you wanted to bury his connections and to find out what really happened, the best thing that could happen would be for him to die. So in the case of this young lad, this 20-year-old who shot at and apparently grazed the ear of Donald Trump, we'll never know what. Now he's dead. So everything now is up to speculation. The most interesting one on my list of all the, Lincoln, Garfield, Kennedy, King, George Wallace, Bobby Kennedy, Reagan. Reagan is the most interesting. And a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that the kid who shot Ronald Reagan, John Hinckley Jr., was the son, surprise, surprise, of John Hinckley Sr. John Hinckley Sr. was the president, CEO, senior executive with a company called Vanderbilt Energy. And John Hinckley Sr. and George H.W. Bush, the elder Bush, John Hinckley Sr. and George H.W. Bush were close friends, very close friends. John Hinckley Sr. was a major contributor to George H.W.'s run at the Republican nomination for the 1980 election in the United States that he lost to Ronald Reagan. And I don't know the U.S. Constitution intimately, but most of us know that when the U.S. president, if he dies, as happened, say, with John F. Kennedy, the presidency then falls to the vice president. In that case, it was Lyndon B. Johnson. In the case of Reagan, if Reagan had been shot by John Hinckley Jr. and killed, then George H.W. Bush, who he competed against for the Republican nomination, would have become president in all likelihood. And if you remember the reporting at that time, there were all kinds of, with Reagan being incapacitated, who was in charge. And I remember Alexander Haig was saying, I'm the one in charge. And there was 3 or 4 people, including George H.W. Bush, saying, you know, I'm in charge now. I am now commander in chief. It was an interesting time. I only found that out years later about the connection between the Hinckley family and the Ronald Reagan assassination attempt. And it just is amazing that John Hinckley Jr. had a filing cabinets full of mental health issues. The guy was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You know, John Hinckley Jr. was a nut bar. And yet, so how is it that a nut bar, a guy with psychiatric problems that would fill filing cabinets, how did he get close enough to the sitting president of the United States and with a gun in his hand? That's, and remember that George H.W. Bush, prior to being vice president of the U.S., one of the roles he held is he used to be the senior director of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. There's wide speculation on that. But John Hinckley Jr. lived. As a matter of fact, I think he eventually got paroled just in the last few years. Now I'm going to read what Hank Holiday, or David, is writing. Saying, the kid is from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. My mother was born there and lived there for the first 4 years of his life. Still have family down there. I should see if they have any gossip. I'm sure they do. Sandy Sanderson is of the opinion that it's a psyop, a psychological operation. Nothing gets discounted by myself out of hand. Not, you know, it's like the whole Big Mike thing I just did a video on. I don't believe it, but I don't dismiss it either. And in the case of Big Mike, Michelle Obama, I tend to lean toward believing that would I fall off my chair if it came out that Michelle Obama is transgender and was born a male? Nope, wouldn't fall off my chair, not for a second. Would I fall off my chair if I found out? You know, it's difficult at times like these. All the world is but a stage and we are merely players. Are we watching a theater unfold? I don't know. Holy cow, I have 10 people watching on a Sunday afternoon. Amazing. Cryptomeria says this could have been worse. Yeah, it could have been worse if his head had turned. You know, there's a picture that's making the rounds. I think it's from the New York Post or New York Times that seems to show a projectile whizzing, you know, as it's about to make impact. And I don't know how far away the shots would have been fired from, but it was probably, you know, over a kilometer away. Apparently it was just outside of the perimeter that they lock down, so to speak, and check in every nook and cranny to make sure that the location is safe. It was just outside of that from where this kid took the shots. And, if a headshot from that distance, from a kilometer or more, you know, even with just the slightest turn of the head, the margin for error is so small. I'm treating this right now like, notwithstanding what Sandy Sanderson is saying, psyop, crazy things can happen in this world, and there are lunatics. It's being reported that this kid, this 20-year-old, that is a registered Democrat, or rather, correction, he was a registered Republican. However, it's also reported that they have documentation that he made donations to a PAC for the Democratic Party. And who knows? Who knows? Sandy Sanderson writes, Trump's deep state 2 guys. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, Sandy. Cryptomeria says, more a failed diversity hire with the SS agents. Um, David writes, about 150 yards IIRC. Not sure exactly what IIRC means. If that was the distance that he was firing from. Um, and they haven't told us what kind of. They said it was an AR, an automatic rifle. Hank Holiday says, for some reason, God said it was not his time. David saying about 150 yards IIRC, if he recalls correctly. Cryptomeria says, I've been watching rallies since 2016. They are safe. It's unbelievable that this could take place. Now, I wanted to share something, and it's all the way back. This is from a Canadian context, and it's a lot. Some of the comments saying that it is staged are based on the fact that Trump, after the Secret Service formed their cordoned him off after they had put bodies on him to protect him from any further fire or anything, that after he stood up and with his ear all bloodied and he pumped his fist and was saying fight, 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 apparently. I don't think there's any audio on it, but it's been reported that he said fight, and now watching his lips doing backwards lip reading, I couldn't tell what he was saying before that. When he got up and he started saying, I could make out the F, but I didn't know what came after it. And then after being told it was fight, I go, okay, yeah, that looks like fight. It's one of those things, suggestive programming. They tell you what someone said, and then you can see it after or hear it after the fact. Anyway, they're saying that, that it's just too convenient that he stood up. And I think that is a brilliant image that Trump would have the wherewithal to understand exactly what was going on. And that doesn't surprise me. And it happened in the context of Canadian politics back in 1968. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau was at a parade in the city of Montreal. And at that time, there was a group called the FLQ, the Front de Libération de Québec. They were a terrorist organization that wanted the province of Quebec to be established as a sovereign nation state. And they had engaged in terrorist activities. They had blown up mailboxes in residential neighborhoods. They kidnapped a minister of the government and murdered him. And so Trudeau was at a parade. I think it was the Saint Jean Baptiste parade, which is a religious holiday in the province of Quebec, which was much bigger back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. By the 80s and 90s, it started to diminish. But back in 1968, the Saint Jean Baptiste parade would have been a big deal. And he was at a reviewing stand. He had a place of honor. And projectiles started to be thrown, maybe glass, maybe rocks. Things were being thrown in toward Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And his security came around him and they tried to usher him out of it. And Trudeau famously made like this, and I'm staying, and made a physical demonstrative show for the cameras that he was staying, that he wasn't having any of this. And it helped to boost his popularity. I actually have the video, and I'll share it with you, of that event, of that parade. It's from video as reported by CBC News retrospectively. I'm just going to catch up on what's being written. David is saying it was the 107th apparition of one of the Fatima apparitions. Fatima, I think that's Portugal. I think Fatima is Portugal or Spain, where it's believed by some that the Virgin Mary appeared to, I think it's 3 young children. I'm not Roman Catholic. Stranger in a Strange Land writes, Mayorkas, DHS, have denied Trump's Secret Service more resources. I wasn't aware of that. Hank Holiday, All I said to those saying it's false flag is now you believe in. Very true. Very true. Now we have the left wing. Excellent point, Hank Holiday. Now we have the left wing all of a sudden coming out with saying conspiracy, conspiracy. They make fun of the right wing when right wingers look at potential conspiracies, but now they're all in. It's all a matter of perspective. Excellent point. Cryptomeria writes, I'm from British Columbia. If Quebec wants to separate, bon voyage. Thank you for. Yeah, a lot of Canadians feel that way. That they wish Quebec would just go. And to inject a little bit of humor, Canadians in Newfoundland would love for Quebec to separate because then it would be a shorter drive to Toronto. But she. Sarah writes, it was an assassination attempt, and I don't know why people would believe otherwise. And she says that the individual who lost his life at the rally was a 50-year-old. Someone did die, reportedly, at this event. Now, the conspiracy-minded types will say that it's all staged, that no one actually died, that no one was injured, that this was all, that was ketchup on his ear or something. Stuff does happen in this world. Anyway, I'll share with you that I have it queued up. I hope it shares across my channel. In the context of this, I already gave it to you. Yeah, the image you're seeing right there, that's Trudeau. Well, I can't, up where I have my cursor. Trudeau's up in this area. They zoom in later once the rocks start flying. So I'll play the video. And this, again, is from back in 1968. So here goes. Commentary.
Voici maintenant à l'estrade d'honneur. Il se produit quelque chose à l'estrade. Et il semble bien que maintenant on ait maîtrisé un assaillant qui s'est présenté à l'estrade d'honneur. Il est regrettable que tous ces incidents se produisent. Il y a des projectiles qui maintenant volent en tous sens et les invités de l'estrade d'honneur rentrent à l'intérieur.
Je pense, Henri, que nous devrions terminer ici.
I think we should end here. That's what they're saying.
Monsieur Trudeau insiste, il veut demeurer sur place.
He's insisting on staying in place.
That
is place of honor.
Monsieur Trudeau a décidé de rester à l'estrade d'honneur et il a refusé d'obéir
He's refusing to be swept away.
Il disait de rentrer.
Comment ça s'est produit exactement? Moi, j'observais, Henri, j'étais un peu distrait, évidemment, vous aviez la partie difficile, et j'observais du côté gauche. On a réussi à contourner la foule des manifestants en la dirigeant du côté de Cherrier. Mais elle s'est regroupée sur la rue Sherbrooke du côté de l'ouest.
Et il y a quelques instants, un assaillant, semble-t-il, s'est...
I'll end it there. And so I was thinking of that. In terms of when Trump very insistent, he wanted to show his presence to the crowd. He wanted to show his face to the crowd. He wanted to show his defiance. And people say, well, that was staged, that was scripted. Well, then was Trudeau scripted too? Well, they were saying is off to the left. Some projectiles were flown. Estrade d'honneur. I'm not sure exactly. He's in the place of honor, the reviewing stand, if you were, for the parade as it goes by. And they tried to rush him out of there. And he was like, no, I'm staying. And that helped boost Trudeau's popularity because it looks good. It looks good for someone to stand up strong against attack. And you don't get any more serious attack in the case of Donald Trump than someone firing bullets at you. And for him to stand up and fight is going to certainly, it's going to energize his base. And it's also going to, anyone sitting on the fence is going to be more inclined to gravitate toward the Trump camp than old man can't complete a full sentence Joe Biden, sleepy, creepy Joe. Just going to catch up on what's being written. Sarah writes that she thinks the Democrats will try again. So we've got to was this a lone gunman? Unfortunately, I wish they hadn't taken him out. I wish they had managed to take this young man alive. Then we could get some answers. We could find out what affiliations he had, if there is a conspiracy involved. As it is, with him dead, it makes establishing any connections to any groups far more difficult. I'm sure everyone's searching his social media feeds and everything like that to find out where his political leanings were. Not all Republicans like Donald Trump. There are some progressive, woke, left-wing type liberals. They call them rhinos, Republican in name only. That's the perspective of me, a Canadian. That's why I put those up. I'm born and bred in Canada, but I spent 10 years, roughly, living in New York, New Jersey, and Oregon. Cryptomeria says, I know too many people from Pennsylvania. I was looking at moving there. And Cryptomeria saw it almost live. Was live streaming, switched it off yesterday as a blur. Interesting times that we are living in. What is going to happen? I think it's on Monday, tomorrow, when the Republican National Committee, the RNC, when they're having their nominating convention in the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which, from what I understand from the reporting that's out there, Milwaukee is very much a Democrat. It's being reported as being a hotbed of Democrat support. It's blue, downtown or Milwaukee. As for the remainder of the state of Wisconsin, I would imagine it tilts heavily red or Republican. I recall from the 2020 election, Wisconsin was one of those contested battleground states, swing states that can go either way. And as I recall, Wisconsin was one of the states where Trump was winning by 100, 200,000, 300,000 votes when everyone went to bed. And then when we woke up in the morning, well, all the mail-in ballots came in and it flipped the state, flipped Wisconsin, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all the battleground states flipped overnight based on the mail-in ballots. I have a new one. Oh, Thomas. Yes, it is a long time. Thomas is from the Netherlands and has been watching the channel for a long time. Sojourner Didymus. Took me forever to connect your live stream name with your commenting name. I can be slow at times. Just jumping in, but what do you think about this being a trick by the GOP to make him even more popular? That is a widely circulating conspiracy theory right now. That I just think logistically it would be too difficult to pull off. It would just be, and we'll find out more as time goes on. I mean, this story is basically, it's less than 24 hours old at this point, and the conspiracy theories are going to come fast and furious. But I do not. I tend to view this as, right now, I'm sitting here and I'm saying the way it's being reported is the way it's happening. I think it was a 20-year-old kid. I think there's potential that this kid was working with somebody, that he was not a lone gunman, and that the ultimate goal was indeed to take out Donald Trump. I think that's a distinct possibility. I mean, we have a number of different. Was this kid just a lone nut bar acting on his own, thinking that, believing all this reporting, calling Donald Trump the next Hitler, forgetting that we had 4 years of Donald Trump from 2016 to 2020, and the United States did not turn into Nazi Germany during that time, except maybe a little bit during the COVID era, when in some states like Michigan and certainly California, just about, states governed by guys like Gavin Newsom went full authoritarian, full fascist on their populations. But from the federal side, everything was beautiful in the United States. Donald Trump, rather than being this militaristic, everyone said he's going to start World War III when he was elected, and yet no major wars started. He ended the war he had troops brought back from Syria. And if Barack Obama had brought the troops home from Syria, they would have held a parade down, in New York Street or New York City. Would have had a Broadway parade for Barack Obama returning the troops from Syria. When Trump does it, they said he made a mistake. When Australia and New Zealand restricted travel from China into their countries in the early days of COVID in January, February of 2020, they were applauded. Way to go. When Donald Trump did it, Donald Trump restricted travel coming from Italy and China. I think in February of 2020, Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democratic leadership accused him of being xenophobic and racist. And then afterwards, they said, you didn't do enough for COVID. I'm letting my bias out. I mean, I've said it before on this channel. My bias is clear. If I was an American, if I had a vote, I would vote for Trump every day of the week and twice on Sunday. I've said it before. I'm just going to catch up. David writes, I can't read that. Thomas writes, just imagine all the Christian prophets from the hyper-charismatic camp claiming victory of the prophecies by pointing out Trump did gain a second term. Everything's possible. People are pouring through their Bibles as we speak. I did look at in and around Revelation 13 last night with respect to the beast that survived, had the mortal wound, but was healed miraculously. I remember I was thinking along those same lines all the way back in 1981 when Ronald Reagan was shot. But Reagan wasn't shot in the head. Reagan, I think, was shot in the side under the arm and survived. Let's go on. Remember here, what's his name? Ronald Reagan also had skin cancer at some point and survived. So he was shot, survived, cancer, survived. Eventually, sadly, he suffered from Alzheimer's and then faded. Stranger in a Strange Land is here. Thomas Matthew Crooks, that's the name of the guy, the kid, the 20-year-old. Thank you for writing that. Appeared in a BlackRock ad in 2023. That's interesting. BlackRock, for those who are not familiar, BlackRock is perhaps the world's largest hedge fund. And a hedge fund, if you don't know what a hedge fund is, it's like a mutual fund. They collect billions, certainly hundreds of billions, maybe trillions of dollars. And they can do two things that a mutual fund cannot. Number one, they can use leverage. So on top of all that money that they have under management, they can use it as leverage and borrow more. So they can move the market. And the other thing they can do is they can go short. They can borrow stock and sell it into the market to tank any particular company's share price by flooding the market with borrowed shares. They borrowed shares. The short selling is when you borrow someone else's shares and sell them into the market based on the belief that at a later date you'll be able to buy them back at less than what they were sold for. Short selling is it's very conceptually from 100 miles up. It's very easy. You're betting that a stock will go down in value, but the mechanics of how a short sale work are important, because what you're doing is you're borrowing someone else's shares, selling them into the market, and getting your money, and then you have to replace those shares, but you're betting that you'll be able to buy them back at less than what you sold them for. If anyone is ever curious, short selling is basically can move the market. And when you have an outfit like BlackRock that is massive in scope and size. Probably they certainly have trillions in terms of the amount of money that they can tap into. They have the money under management, and then they can borrow more, so they can absolutely affect the market. Just going to catch up. Thomas, the deep state is run by money. BlackRock is their go-to gun for hire. I find it when you read the I forget the name of the author now, the Jason Bourne novels. What do they call it? Treadstone. And I sometimes think of Treadstone as being the operational arm of a group like BlackRock. If for those who are familiar with the Jason Bourne novels, I've read the novels, I haven't seen any of the movies, not in completion. I've seen snippets of the movies. Hank Holiday is asking if I think, or he's putting it out there, does anyone think that this young kid, what was his name again? Thomas Matthew Crooks, was he a Manchurian candidate? And if anyone's unfamiliar with this term Manchurian candidate, it comes from a program that was apparently run by the CIA going all the way back to the 60s, mind control, and basically having people walking around not knowing that they're mind controlled, and then they can be triggered by code words or programming to commit nefarious acts. The most famous individual accused or speculated to have been a Manchurian candidate was Sirhan, who's the individual who shot Robert Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s dad. He claims that he has no memory of what happened in that hotel where Bobby Kennedy was celebrating. I think that was the night of the California primary that Bobby Kennedy had just won. He was there celebrating, and he was shot. Sirhan was apprehended. Sirhan wasn't killed, though, like this young kid, like this 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Got to get that name. I wonder if that name is going to be embedded into our mind, like John Hinckley Jr., like John Wilkes Booth, like James Earl Ray, guy who shot Martin Luther King. These names become embedded. And then Crypt Miria writes, I don't want to sound cruel, but if Trudeau is allowed as much guns and protection as taxes can provide, but I don't have the legal right to protect myself with a gun, then I have a problem. Crypt Miria has something of what I'll call Second Amendment sensibilities, and so do I. Second Amendment is the amendment in the U.S. Constitution that guarantees the right to bear arms. The rationale behind it was, when it was written, that if the government turns horrible and tyrannical and the citizenry wants to fight back against a tyrannical government, well, you need weaponry in order to do that. And as we've seen in this country, Canada, the government can absolutely turn tyrannical. But anyway, those are the thoughts I just wanted to put out there. The big one is that one, and I don't think many people are aware of the connections between John Hinckley Jr., the guy who shot Ronald Reagan in 1981, and the George H.W. Bush family, and how closely those families were connected. You can read all kinds of stories. They used to vacation together. The Bush boys and the Hinckley boys, sleepovers, they were tight. These two families were tight, very tight. John Hinckley Sr. was a key contributor to George H.W. Bush's campaign against Reagan for the GOP's presidential nomination. Reagan beat him. And then one of George H.W. Bush's best friends has a son with mental issues up the wazoo who's able to get close enough to Ronald Reagan to put a bullet in him. It was always odd. And I wonder, how was this kid able to get close enough to Donald Trump? Is there something going on behind the scenes that allowed this, whatever Thomas Matthew Crooks, something that allowed him to get that close enough to get a bullet through Donald Trump's ear? But this is going to help Trump, at least. It cannot hurt him. That image of him getting up and pumping his fist and yelling, "Fight, fight, fight," is going to resonate with a lot of Americans. The diehard haters, who these are people who don't know the difference between a boy and a girl, so they're lost. They're done. I mean, they're the ones who will stay with Biden no matter what. Their heads are so far up their nether regions, they don't know the difference between a penis and a vagina. Sorry for the graphic language, but it's technically correct. Anyway, God bless. If you like this, thank you for the 7 thumbs up. If you want to subscribe to my channel, I'll be going live again tonight and talking more about this and other things. So you're welcome to subscribe to the channel. Get me up on that march to 1,000. Miserable little station of a nobody Canadian just throwing his thoughts out into the public square. And we'll see you all soon. Oh, wait, before I go, a great comment by Stranger in a Strange Land. I'll have to verify this, but usually I find the comments 99 times out of 100. They're based on fact. Stranger in a Strange Land writes, Crook's parents were both mental health counselors. Was Thomas on SSRI drugs? I don't know what that acronym means, SSRI, but I assume it's got something to do with what Hank Holliday was saying, Manchurian Candidate. SSRI type of drugs, maybe that can be used for things like post-hypnotic suggestion and things like that. I don't know. Got to do some reading. God bless everyone, and we'll see you all soon.